And I spent.
Okay. That would make sense.
It's the cool stuff.
9 o'clock, we're gonna get the show on the road. Please stand for the pledge.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Are there any additions or changes to the agenda?
No.
Okay. Someone please move the agenda. And I need a. Blake, will you please move the agenda so we can go on with other things?
Moved. Support.
Thank you. All those in favor say aye.
Aye. I don't know if I like that strong arming up there, Madam Chair.
I was just asking why he was dressed up.
Okay, approval of February 14th minutes. Support?
Support.
Been moved and supported. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Minute-
Pass one zip.
minutes. Limited public comment. Hearing none. Road Commissioners report.
Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
It's that time of year again, I guess. Seems like only yesterday. Get in line, yeah, I know, right? Well, I sent a bunch of stuff in a packet.
Oh, did you? We didn't know?
Blake said, yeah. Blake said it took him a while to even look through it. Yeah, so, yeah, but I mean, if I send you too much stuff, by all means say, hey, I don't need that stuff in the future, but figured I'd send it and then you guys can look at it and bring up questions. But couple items in there are the supplemental annual report for last year and the last year's millage report. They were draft because I have not had a chance to review them yet. I'm a little busy right these days, but we're working on it. I guess I'd just like to go through some work we did last year, and then go through some upcoming projects for this year, talk about a couple items, and then answer any questions you guys have. So, last year we actually constructed a project that was supposed to be done in 2022, but due to bids and issues, it got pushed to next year, but it was Battle Creek from Bellevue to Bradley. That got done, turned out real nice, so now all of Battle Creek Road is complete. All of Marshall Road, so those two old MDOT turnbacks that had those terrible bumps are fixed and should last a nice 20, 25 years. And then we did 5 Point Highway from Whittam to the Eaton Rapids city limits. That was a small urban project, federal project. We've not used small urban funds in the past. That's the first one. We typically don't compete with the small communities on that, but some things happened and we ended up with some funding on that. So the Battle Creek one was about 1.8 million total, and the 5 Point project was about 580,000. And those are the two big federal aid projects. And then on top of that, we resurfaced about 6.5 miles of primary road and did a seal coat on about 80 miles of primary road last year. So trying to get a seal coat program somewhere between 60 and 70 miles each year. We did a little more than that last year, but the plan is to have a rotating program every 5 years, so our primary road get sealed every 5 years to extend the life of them. Some of them will be sealed, even though they're probably beyond the condition of a seal, but you can't just let them go either. So I'm also looking at a 3 or 4 year plan to do some resurfacing. So when we seal them, the resurfacing will last longer. On the local roads, between the millage and then road commission funds, we did about 19 miles of resurfacing on the paved roads and 74 miles of re-gravel. Those are both millage. The road commission subsidized those because prices have gone up and the millage isn't enough to cover everything. And then we also did a chip seal on 18 miles of road. The road commission paid for 1 mile in each township, and then the Hamlin Township paid for another 2 miles to get done in their township. So And then bridges, there's a Harris Road Bridge. The deck, it's a wood bridge. The deck was falling apart, had holes in it. I don't know who's all familiar with that, but, so it's been closed for a bit. We got a new deck, it's replaced. It's gotta stay closed until we put asphalt on it, which will happen as soon as asphalt plants are available sometime in the spring, so. That is kind of everything, the projects we did last year. In the annual report, as usual, there's a financial summary in there, and then all the reports on what projects we did. In the back, there's the map that shows all the projects we did. That's the calendar year, so that's what was done in the calendar year '23, not the fiscal year. It just seems to be easier that way. We've had questions in the past, hey, where's this project? And so instead of explaining it, we just do the calendar year on that. And then in the millage program, the millage report, each township has a map showing what's been done, as well as a list as usual. And then, I like to point out a couple things. The table on page 7, shows how far along we are. As you can see, a lot of the townships, all the asphalt's been resurfaced, and we're hitting the gravels on those pretty hard. And then the next page is the financial summary. As I said, the road commission subsidized the millage, to the tune of almost $14 million since it started, so we put quite a bit of our own funds into that, but we also don't want to do something that's not gonna last. Something needs a crush and shape, you don't wanna just overlay it and then it doesn't last. Let's see what else I got on my list here.
Hey, Matt,
Yes.
while you're looking at, just since you touched on that, the 14 million that the road commission has subsidized the local program, just curious, is that something as we look forward to potential renewal, is that something that you think will continue? That there'll have to be additional money supplemented by the road commission unless we were to look at a higher, I guess, millage? Not that I'm suggesting that, but just.
Right, it depends on, I think, what we decide to do. I've looked at the numbers a little bit, and if we kept the same, mill that we're accepting right now, I think we can do a real good job of keeping the roads in good shape that we've done.
There was more upfront money for the infrastructure, I guess, than we had predicted, or
well-
was that what caused the overage? Or just the cost of things?
So the original estimate was to do a 2-inch overlay and gravel shoulders, and that was it. We've got culverts that we've replaced. If you start adding all those costs in, we would have never gotten enough money to be able to do all that. It would have been like 2.5 mils probably, so.
Okay.
So we just looked at an overlay and a resurfacing, knowing that we would have to replace culverts. Some of the roads needed a crush and shape. Those costs are paid for by the road commission, which are the crushing part, the gravel you have to put on it. And so we knew those costs would occur. I don't know if we knew how much it would cost overall, but
Sure.
we knew there'd be cost to the road commission above and beyond the millage, so.
Okay, thank you.
Madam Chair.
Yes, Jim.
Hey, Matt, thanks. Since we're on the financial summary, under revenue for the township expenditures for previous years' budgets was actual like over 100,000, a little over 100,000, but this budgeted, you have 1.1 million. Is that because there's some big projects coming up in
Yeah.
some of the townships?
Yes, we have Nixon Road, which, from St. Joe to Mount Hope, it's gonna get crushed shape, it's gonna be widened with bike lanes. Delta Township is paying the local match portion of that. Let me look at my list and see what's coming up here. I'm trying to remember everything. So, I'm starting to sound like a broken record, but I'm doing the engineer's job again. I did hire a young engineer, and it's very competitive now, and a consultant poached her from me. And so I'm back to doing both the assistant engineer's job and my job. And so if you ask me a question, I may not have the answer in my head like I normally would, because it's hard to remember everything. Nixon Road. Yeah, so it's Nixon Road, and the Hamlin Township is matching some seal coat again this year. So Phil got a hold of me from Hamlin. They want to keep their local roads in good shape now that we've done the millage. And so we came up with an agreement to put a seal coat on their local paved roads. I think it's every 4 years, we'll rotate, so every 4 years it's gonna get a seal coat to keep those roads in good shape, so something I'd like to do with all the townships, but some townships aren't as interested in funding road projects, and some townships I've not been able to talk to honestly, so. So I think that's probably, where that amount's coming from.
Okay, thanks.
Two projects.
I would like to do a shout out to Matt and the road commission. They did my road this last year, and there were some issues with it, and some of the residents were complaining about some of the work. And Matt really held the contractor's feet to the fire, and they had to come back a couple of times and fix the problems. And when basically after 2 or 3 times back to our road and having to repave and do some digging and some new curb work, the job got done, and it looks like it got done appropriately and in a good fashion. And I know that only happened because Matt held the contractors responsible for making sure the job was right before they moved on. So I appreciate that, and I think it's, they don't do the work themselves, they don't do the curbs, they hire third parties to do all of that. And it would be just easy for him just to move on and say, well, it doesn't drain properly on that part of the road, and so be it. But they didn't do that, and I appreciate that. And from my neighborhood residents, but I think it reflects the entire way that the road commission is approaching these projects. They're doing it in a way that's sustainable and that is responsible to the property owners that are there. So thank you for that.
Yeah, I appreciate the kind words. I'll tell you my thought process on that. Contractors working for us, they need to do a good job. Would I be happy with it if I was paying for it at my house? I look at it the same way if it's on the roads. It's my job to make sure things are getting done right and the money's getting spent right. The other part of that is we make mistakes too. Sometimes we'll do some curb areas, and we grade it wrong, we do whatever, and so we have to pay, and that's part of the matching that the road commission has is a mistake we had where we have to pay to have the contractor redo it because we screwed it up. So either way, it's gotta be right when we're done, and, yeah.
I didn't know that. It was your fault that we had problems.
It's, and that one maybe, it's possible, I don't know, it's possible.
just said thanks, Matt.
I know, hey, if nothing, I'm honest, so maybe to a fault sometimes, so. But no, I appreciate that, and if you guys hear complaints on things that something's not right, we can't fix everything. Sometimes somebody's just, no matter what you do, you're not gonna make them happy, but, if there's an area holding water, shouldn't, whatever, let me know, and we'll definitely try to address it best we can, so. Now I'm completely lost. Who invited these two?
Compliment will just throw you right off.
I know, right? I'm not used to that. I work for the government. I think I had a couple project lists in there, maybe, yeah? Okay. I don't remember what I had in there. This kind of goes through the projects that we did last year, 5 Point, Battle Creek, and then the upcoming projects, which is Nixon Road that I kind of mentioned. It says 2023 because the funding year is 23. We bid it last year. It came in 50% over. The bids last year were out of this world, so we had to rebid it. Bids came in right where we expected. So that'll get done starting in May, hopefully is the plan, or early June. Oneida Road was a federal aid buyout, which is a terrific program. MDOT canceled it this year. They said they don't have enough money to match it. And so now our federal projects, we have to go through the MDOT process, which is excessive. I'll put it that way. But last year we did get one for Oneida Road from St. Joe to M43. We're gonna go all the way to Mount Hope, but the St. Joe to M43 part is partially federally funded. And that'll just be an overlay, and we're replacing culverts as we speak. And then Smithville down by Eaton Rapids, replacing the joints, fixing the bridge up, get another 25, 30 years out of it before we have to do some more maintenance on it, so. Oh, and then Royston Road, that project has been on our list for 3 years, I think. And we're finally absolutely gonna do it this year. Bids are out, or the bid package is out. That's from 5 Point up to M50. The section through where the deep drain is on the one side, we're gonna have to lower the road in order to get shoulders on it. So it'll get lowered about a foot through there. Plus with the soils, I wanna reduce the weight going through there. And then north of where the old railroad tracks are, we're gonna trench it, widen it, crush and shape it like we did on 5 Point and other projects. So it'll end up having paved shoulders all the way, the whole stretch of Royston, all the way from Bellevue up to M50. We'll have paved shoulders on it. And that's 100% paid for by the road commission. And then the fun one is Davis Highway, up there by the battery plant. The battery plant, Ultium, worked with the state of Michigan and got $18.2 million from MEDC to improve the roads around the plant. And not just the roads, the infrastructure, so utilities, whatever essentially needs to be done. That's kind of what I was told, is make the battery plant happy and don't go over 18.2 million. So Davis Highway, between Guinea and Nixon, is gonna get fully reconstructed this year. We're looking at either a signal or a roundabout at the entrance into the plant, because they're gonna have like 1,000 cars coming in the morning, and it's crazy, what they're gonna have going on there, so. And then Nixon, in the future, Nixon from Davis up to Mount Hope will get reconstructed. And then Millet, the section that we disconnected, at the request of GM, we're gonna reconnect that and reconstruct that part, so. So that whole area is gonna get paved and improved. It'll be, the trucks are gonna have to go down Davis, they're not gonna be able to go up Nixon. Delta has no trucking on Mount Hope Highway, so they can't use that anyway. That's just for employees to go around that direction, so. So the next few years, there's gonna be a ton of work up there, and this year Davis Highway is one of them. And then I also included the upcoming millage program that's been approved by the board. And I guess that's what I included in your package. Oh, and the one last thing was the compliance plan. It's asset management plan is what it is. The state passed a law a few years ago where we're required to submit an asset management plan and update it every 3 years. Mine was due in October 2022, and I submitted it a month ago. So if you look at the law, it's actually not due till next October, but either way. But that's what that is. It's a cookie cutter thing. If you look at all the other road commissions, theirs looks exactly the same and has almost exact same wording in it. Obviously, maps and road projects are different, but.
Yes, Terrence.
Matt, just a summary. I know it's still March, but the winter snow plowing, I assume you guys came in quite a bit under budget with that?
Yep, I didn't get one this month yet. Last month, I forget how much we were under, but yeah, we were under a decent amount.
Quite a bit, I assume,
We're
yeah.
done with nothing essentially, so.
Right.
Yeah, it'll be pretty good this year. My plan is, when we do our budget amendment, to add another mile of local seal coat in each township, just because we got to keep the local roads in good shape. Hopefully, we can get a millage to help with that. But until then, I can't assume we're gonna have it, so I gotta plan ahead, so.
Right, okay, thank you.
So I think that's all I have, unless anybody has questions. I'm sure they do.
Okay, Jim.
Yeah, Matt, under your, the road millage program for Walton Township, you've got paved road resurfacing. Most of those roads under that are dirt. Am I reading that wrong?
No, so all the paved roads in Walton Township have been surfaced, so there's
Okay.
no more paved roads to do in Walton Township on the local system.
Okay.
So everything from here out will be gravel.
I knew they were on the list for gravel.
Yeah, and then I did change projects at their request. We sent out the preliminary list. The clerk got a hold of me and asked if we could do a different road. And that's part of the reason we send it out for comment, is to get township comment, public comment, and if they would prefer to do a different road, that works for me. I don't have any reason to pick roads other than I try to group them together as best I can, but.
Okay. Well, speaking of Walton Township, I was at their board meeting last night, and since, this might be overload for you for compliments, but I gotta ask.
We already know he doesn't handle
I'm gonna start blushing.
I gotta ask, as I normally do, about roads, because they think I'm part of the road commission, so. But the conversation from the attendees and the board were very pleased with the condition of the roads, so.
Yeah, I think we've, I don't, I'll be careful how I say things, but I think the relationship might have been strained a few years ago. I'm just not great, but I'm more of a, I mean, we got to cooperate with everybody. I mean, they don't have to like me, I don't have to like them, but let's cooperate for the good of the public kind of thing. Not like I don't like Walton Township, don't tell them that. They've all been fine, they've all been fine to me.
You're on the air, so.
But I think we worked together, we did that Butterfield Highway project. It settled, the whole soil thing settled, and so we had to go out and mill it and fix it and whatever, and I think that turned out well. They sound like they're real happy with that, so it's a matter of cooperation to work together, and I think it's made the relationship much better, honestly, so.
No, it has, thank you.
Any other questions? Yeah. Thank you for your report.
Yeah, no problem, I appreciate it.
Construction code.
Morning, everybody.
Good morning.
I am pleased to announce that our online permitting is up and running. We're working out a few bugs on our end, but nothing that the public knows is going on, I guess. It doesn't affect what's happening, but as far as I know, and I haven't asked Brandy, but I don't think we've had any complaints from anybody about it. They all like it. Contractors especially, they can go home at 8 o'clock at night and turn in their permits, and we look at them the next morning. So, other than that, unless you guys have questions for me, I'm gonna turn it over to Ms. Miller to talk about the DCAs. Okay,
Okay, thank you.
Randy?
Good morning. Randy. Does anybody have any questions? So in front of you are two district change amendments. The first one, which is DCA 324-1, is a change to the entire document due to the departmental changes. So you'll see throughout that anywhere where it mentions community development has been changed to construction code and planning and zoning. The development official had maybe 6 different titles throughout the entire document. The development official is defined in Article 5 of the zoning ordinance. So anywhere where it said the director, zoning administrator, community development director, it now is titled development official. And there were 2 incorrect public acts in there. I think they were just typos, but the Land Division Act at one point had a typo on it, and as did the State of Michigan Construction Code Act. So that's the first text amendment, and that does represent the entire zoning ordinance. Any questions on that one?
So that's really housekeeping,
Correct.
more or less.
Correct.
There's nothing that's changed other than some phraseology.
Absolutely.
Okay.
The second district change amendment, DCA 324-2, is reflective of zoning ordinance committee meetings that we have had. We have proposed to remove the definition of personal service establishment and just direct people to the actual zoning ordinance section. That was an oversight when Article 14.40 was written a few years ago. So much like other uses that are defined within Article 5, if there are regulations and conditions, rather than give the definition a second time in the zoning ordinance, we direct them to where in the zoning ordinance they can find the definition, regulations, and conditions. The second amendment is to Article 7, specifically low-density residential, allowing for duplex dwelling units as a use by right versus a site plan review for a conversion of a single-family home or a conditional use permit to construct one. This was a request by a local resident. When sent out to Construction Code, the Health Department, the Drain Office, the Road Commission, there were no concerns, as anything that is constructed has to have those offices' approvals prior to obtaining a building permit. Any questions on that portion? The next section is for legal nonconformities. Currently, office staff, since my tenure here at the county, and I'm sure Ms. Williams can vouch for it, when a property does not meet zoning ordinance regulations, but it's owned by a contiguous property owner, we have always been able to allow for either the adjustment or combination of those lots without requiring them to go through the Board of Appeals to obtain a variance. Sometimes the end resulting combination of a lot doesn't necessarily meet zoning ordinance requirements, but allowing the combination doesn't make it more nonconforming, it makes it less nonconforming. Or allowing for a proposed adjustment wouldn't make it more nonconforming, meaning less road frontage, make it not meet width to depth ratio, make it not meet the minimum acreage size. A perfect example would be Mr. Trowbridge's property up in Sunfield Township off from Sabi Lake. The Trowbridge family owned two pieces of property. One happened to be their road frontage, the other one was the bulk of their property. Allowing for that combination was something that we are allowed to do, and did not make the property more nonconforming. In fact, it made it more conforming with the zoning ordinance regulations. So that's not actually written in the zoning ordinance currently, and we're proposing to put it within Article 12, which is our nonconformity section of the zoning ordinance, to help offer clarity for not only property owners, but just general public.
Yes, Blake.
When a non-conforming property, you've done the adjustments and you've tried to make it more conforming, you've got these oddball properties, you see them regularly. When that property is going to transfer to a new owner, to new ownership, does the nonconformity transfer with it?
Yes, the legal nonconformity would transfer with it, yes.
And so, and there's no then there's no reason to raise objection on your part when the property transfers, even though it's in fact non-conforming?
If it's a legal nonconformity, you are correct.
One that you've okayed?
Correct.
Or that we've okayed, I mean? Okay.
Correct.
You don't okay anything.
Any other questions?
You got in trouble for compliments last report.
Yeah, don't give.
Going the opposite direction.
Any other questions regarding that portion of the DCA? Next is Article 14.25, surface mines. We are proposing to remove the 5-year reapplication requirement. Surface mine enforcement and surface mine inspections do take place annually. They do go in front of the Planning Commission with a site plan. There are provisions within Section 14.25, which allow for staff to allow for minor adjustments of the site plan. There are provisions that would require the surface mine operator / property owner to have to go back in front of the Planning Commission. If it were, let's say, if they were approved to mine on the southwest portion of their property, but then they decided to mine on the northeast portion of their property. At that point, they would have to go back in front of the Planning Commission for a change of conditions. Our surface mine applications are the only ones that are required to submit a new application every 5 years. It's a bit redundant. They are inspected annually by myself and by the drain office, and this year we are actually going to invite Eagle to inspect them with us as well. Any questions regarding that?
So what was the purpose of having them reapply every 5 years?
It has been in the zoning ordinance since 1981, so if I had to guess, I would say lack of knowledge regarding surface mines or lack of inspections regarding surface mines. The zoning ordinance is a living document, so the annual inspections hasn't always been the case, nor have they always been consistent, but they are now consistent and taken place in cooperation with other departments as well.
But if what you have is that every year you re-inspect, do you have the power to close it down?
Yes, if there is a complaint and enforcement action needs to be taken, absolutely.
Close it down permanently or just stop it until it makes corrections?
It would never be our goal to close anything down permanently, but we would stop it until it makes corrections, and at that point, it would come back to the Planning Commission, and the Planning Commission would actually hear it to do a revocation of the conditional use permit.
Well, theoretically, if I had to reapply every 5 years for something, then if you turn me down, it's over. It's closed, right? Mm-hmm. So in this case, it doesn't close, it just kind of holds in abeyance until somebody's satisfied.
Correct. Surface mines are also required to be rehabilitated progressively. So as they are mining per their plan that's been approved, once they're done with an area, they're required to rehabilitate it before they move on.
That was gonna be my next question. How much attention are we paying to I suspect, the pollution that is being generated out there, dust or whatever, in terms of what they're working on?
We pay a great deal of attention to that. Like I said, I go out with the drain office. Mr. Garrison had the privilege of going last year as well, so he can see how the surface mine inspections are taken. I walk the entire mine. I go up the banks, I come down the banks. A great deal of attention specifically to any debris potentially leaving the site. A great deal of attention is made to that specifically.
So you feel that with the process that you have in place, that the general public would be still protected?
Yes.
Thank you.
Well, and just,
Yes,
if I may, to follow up on that, because I think I see where Joe's going with this. I mean, if, in his example of somebody having to apply every 5 years, if they applied and they were denied, they could apply again, they could correct it and come in and apply again, correct?
The only time, if somebody submits an application for a conditional use permit and they're denied, the only time they can reapply prior to a 1-year period is if there is new evidence, meaning they'd have to have some kind of something substantial, different from what they submitted in their application.
Right.
To be considered again.
Right. Okay.
yes, Brian.
Randy, if you just indulge me for a minute, what is the largest surface mine operation we have going in Eaton County right now?
It's actually a toss-up between Cheney Surface Mine over in Bellevue Township and Crandall.
Okay.
So, and you say Eaton County, keep in mind, we also have a surface mine in Windsor Township that I don't have jurisdiction over.
Yeah, well, you're right. The ones you have jurisdiction over, but
Thank you.
I just wanted to put that in perspective because we're not looking at huge operations in Eaton County.
No, and I will say that we are fortunate that we have some great mine operators to work with. Anytime a change is proposed to Article 14.25, a conversation is had with the mine operators first prior to going to the zoning ordinance committee. And we do have a potential new mine that'll be applying this year to go into Eaton Rapids Township off from 99.
Thank you.
Any other questions on surface mines? Next would be a proposed change to section 14.27, which is our communication tower sections. That change is proposed to remove the landscaping buffer requirement. It does conflict with federal regulation requirements where they're required to have fencing, and our landscaping requirements requires them to kind of block that fencing. It's required to be open for security purposes. There's also a proposed change to remove the requirement that the structures comply with, I don't remember what that one says because we've never actually held them to it, to be honest. Something to the effect of any structures on the property cannot be made of, or have to be stucco or brick or something of that nature, which would not be consistent. Most of these are in limited ag zoned properties. We have steel pole barns all over the place. So just trying to bring it into consistency with federal regulations and local zoning regulations for structures.
That's all 4 of them?
That's the 2 district change amendment applications.
2 district and, okay. I would move them all.
Is there support?
Support.
It's been moved and supported. Any discussion? If not, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? This passes.
Really quickly, as requested by the Board of Commissioners, the zoning ordinance committee did work on a proposed interpretation application for the Board of Appeals to consider where marijuana facilities may operate within Eaton County under current zoning ordinance regulations. That was in fact passed by the zoning Board of Appeals at their March 5th meeting. So we now have on file an interpretation as to where marijuana facilities can operate within Eaton County. They are all on commercial or industrial properties. They are all either a use by right or by conditional use permit, depending on the type of facilities. Keep in mind, while we have that interpretation, The permitting agency is still the township, the city, or the village. Any questions regarding that?
Yes.
So that's not a change to the ordinance then? That's just an interpretation, so that's something different?
Correct. So we now have direction if a township opted in and wanted to allow for them, we have clear direction in writing saying where could each facility operate.
But it's not written into the ordinance that way?
It is not.
Well, I'm just curious, how come we went that route as opposed to putting something in the ordinance?
That route was actually recommended by our attorney back in 2017.
Okay.
And after the zoning ordinance committee met, the same idea came up. Staff wasn't aware of that 2017 opinion until we asked again. So not wanting to draw attention to it, so not trying to put pressure on our local townships, the zoning ordinance committee and the planning commission felt that was the best route to go. The zoning ordinance committee will be meeting next week and will consider adding definitions for the marijuana facilities within Article 5 of the zoning ordinance, and will consider prohibiting marijuana facilities as a home business.
Could we have that interpretation presented to us at the next meeting, or at least provided to us?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Yes, Brian.
It's my understanding that the state of Michigan determined that hemp and marijuana were one and the same now, is that correct?
They are not one and the same. They are regulated by the Cannabis Regulatory Authority. At one point, hemp was regulated by MDARD. It is now, they're both under the Cannabis Regulatory Agency. Hemp is still an agricultural product. Marijuana is still not, but they're under the same regulatory authority.
Okay, so for instance, there is an example, the hemp plant there in Hamlin Township, that is considered agricultural.
Correct.
But if they were processing marijuana, they would have to become commercial or industrial?
They would, yes.
Okay, so just throwing that out there as an example, if that plant in Hamlin Township made the determination they were going to process marijuana instead, then they would have to go through the whole zoning process?
If Hamlin Township were still under our zoning, we would direct them to go to Hamlin Township first because they're
Right.
the actual permitting agency. And then we would work with Hamlin Township to figure out which zoning process they would go to.
They're not.
Okay. All right, so nothing at this point, if there's going to be a change in processing, it's not grandfathered in at all? It's all,
Correct.
okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Do you have anything more for us, Brandy?
do not. Thank you.
Blake?
Thank you, Brandy. I just want to thank you for working on that particular issue. And I understand the process and why you went your way you did, and I think that might be a good way. In the end, I think a township, if it's considering some sort of operation, now they're going to ask you questions. It won't come out of the blue. I think the township trustees, I don't know, I can't speak for them, but my feeling is that if there was a facility that wanted to go into their area, they would want to get some guidance, and I think probably you'd be involved in that.
We would be, and we do have
Discussion.
a great relationship with our local townships, so,
Okay.
yes. Thank you.
You're welcome. Next.
Good morning.
Morning.
Today's scheduled hearing for LeBron trash hauling, we would like to cancel. Mr. LeBron came in yesterday afternoon, and he completed his paperwork and his payment for both the solid waste ordinance licensing 2024 and the solid waste ordinance reporting 2023, period 2.
I'm shocked myself.
If there are no questions regarding that, I will turn it over to Jared.
Yes.
I have a quick question. It doesn't have anything to do with with that part of the ordinance per se, but if someone has an issue with a trash hauler that they want to make a complaint with somebody, is there a state agency? Where would that go? Do you know? I know, I cut you off. If you just,
I would have to research that.
Yeah, if you have any
I have
idea.
never heard of anything coming through our office.
Okay,
so
that's what I was wondering, is if
I
it,
think it would be a state issue.
Okay.
But I could look into that further to get a definite.
no,
answer.
we can talk offline, it's not a big.
Okay.
Thanks.
All right. All right, thank you.
Well, that's kind of like what's going on in Lansing, where there's that area where they don't have pickup. You know, there's construction going on, and all the residents are whining that the trash isn't getting picked up, and you know, just an example. Who do they complain to? Well, they complain to the city. And I suppose if this situation were happening in our county, they would complain to us.
Well, is that city-run trash
that's where-
pickup? I
yeah,
think
that's
that's the difference. Lansing runs their own trash pickup.
Right, yeah.
Or they don't run it, they're contracted with Granger, so they have a bigger hand in it than we do.
And it may not, and what I'm saying, it may not necessarily even be a customer of somebody who's upset with the service that they're getting. It could be a neighbor who's upset that maybe the trash hasn't been picked up for 2 months and is now attracting, you know,
Or
all the fun stuff that comes with.
Picked up at 10:30 at night.
Right, so that's where, yeah, that was kind of where I was headed with it, but we can chat about that later.
Okay, thank you.
Thank Blake for his empathy towards the citizens of Lansing.
I just didn't want it to transfer over to my county.
I'm not sure that I would characterize their concerns as whining, but if that's, you know, do you think the appropriate term?
Good morning.
Morning. I'll start with our county programs. We have our recycling events up and running. They're going to be publicly posted this week. We have the Spring Cleanup, Recycling Fever, and Recycle Palooza. And we did end up getting the Eagle Scrap Tire Grant fully funded, and so we'll be doing the tire event on June 15th and on August 10th this year. And then most of my report will be about the materials management plan. And we have been meeting with various counties and Eagle, sorry, I'm still getting used to that, Eagle and the Michigan Recycling Coalition. And there is a lot of confusion over what the Part 115 update means for a lot of the counties. And I've been going over the legislation, reading it over and over, and with your packet, you should have a timeline of what the Resource Recovery Department's going to be recommending. And just to clarify any confusion, the Materials Management Plan is designed to take waste out of the landfills. Michigan has some of the lowest tipping fees in the country, and currently, we have trash haulers from Canada, Ohio, Indiana, Illinois, and coming and dumping in our landfills because it's cheaper than where they are located. And the state of Michigan is looking to address that. Governor Whitmer and the legislature is looking at increasing the minimum tipping fee for the state of Michigan to discourage out-of-state and out-of-country trash coming into our state. And tied into that is the materials management plan, where our landfills are filling very quickly, and the state of Michigan would like the counties to be responsible for managing waste diversion. And what the state of Michigan wants us to do is to categorize and track every material going into our landfills and finding ways where we can divert it, whether it's recycling or composting, hazardous waste disposal, again, the scrap tires. And as part of that plan, we are going to have to be taking a lot of data and a lot of information on what kind of waste is produced by Eaton County, and what we can do with that and how we can divert it. And we've talked about the hub and spoke model, and this is where the hub and spoke model would come in to the materials management plan, where we would be looking at how we can take materials from all around the county, particularly in our rural areas where it's a bit more challenging, and how we could take those and find ways to manage
our waste. And the material management plan is, the legislation is requiring that the Board of Commissioners for each county be the designated, if they accept, be the county approval agency. There's a lot of acronyms. And the notice of intent, the primary due date that we need to be focused on is July 6th. And so the notice of intent, the only part of the legislation that we are required to complete is to determine the county approval agency. And it is our recommendation, Resource Recovery, that the Board of Commissioners in Eaton County accept. If Eaton County Board of Commissioners decides to decline the county approval agency designation, the CAA would get moved to a regional planning commission, which would be the Tri-County Planning Commission. And if they defer, it would go, all the responsibility would fall on Eagle. And Eagle would write our materials management plan, and I don't find that to be favorable to the county. I think it would be far more favorable if we developed our own plan for our materials. And by accepting the county approval agency designation, the county approval agency would then have to appoint a designated planning agency, which Resource Recovery would recommend to be Resource Recovery. And as the designated planning agency, Resource Recovery would be the primary writer of the work plan to develop how we're going to manage these materials in the county. And we would also, as Resource Recovery, be leading the Materials Management Planning Committee, or the MMPC. And that's a committee made up of 12 or more members from everybody from industry representatives to county elected officials, township elected officials, and municipal elected officials. And as far as due dates and deadlines, after the Eaton County Board of Commissioners accepts or rejects the county approval agency, there is a 120-day deadline from the notice of intent on July 6th, making the designated planning agency appointment due on November 3rd, 2024, and 180 days after the NOI for the MMPC, which would be January 3rd, 2025. Resource Recovery is going to be making recommendations to not only for the Eaton County Board of Commissioners to accept the county approval agency designation, but also accelerate the timeline a little bit, where I have it in my notes. By May 2024, the designated planning agency will be officially appointed, which would be recommended to be the Resource Recovery. And then in June, it's recommended that we appoint our Materials Management Plan Committee. And when we submit our notice of intent on July 6th, we will have all of these in place, and each of these warrants further discussion. And again, this is to look at our waste streams and how we can divert as much of our materials out of our landfills as we can. And the state of Michigan, Eagle, is going to be granting county approval agencies and designated planning agencies $60,000 in the first year, plus 50 cents per capita. So we're looking at about $100,000 to $110,000 in grant money to be able to implement this. And what that money is going to be used for, we're not sure quite yet, but we are going to have to be developing and building out infrastructure in order to account for the materials diversion and management from the Eagle mandate.
Yes. Parents.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Jared, thank you for this presentation. I appreciate it. I am on board with what the Resource Recovery Department is recommending. Just a question on the timeline of this. Maybe this is more for Connie, but is there a resolution that has to be drafted for us to approve this? Are you asking us to consider this today, or are we looking at doing this the first step in the future?
You mean a resolution to adopt the timeline? Or,
Well, I mean, so I believe, and maybe I'm wrong, but I believe we had already passed a resolution of intent, correct? Or am I thinking of that incorrectly?
I don't think so.
Not that I recall, I'd have to look. We read a
Okay.
letter that said that we had to start providing documentation, but
But we didn't pass a resolution that was an intent that we were going to be the agency or anything?
no.
Okay. I thought we did something towards like the first step of this, but, so I guess my question is are we ready to do that now? Or are you looking to wait until July to do this?
That's what Jared's timeline's for. He's suggesting you do that next month. Is that what you would recommend it?
Yeah.
Every time you do something, it triggers another timeline.
Right, okay.
Yep, and we're recommending April, and we're gonna have, I'll be meeting with other counties and be looking at their resolutions and how their drafts look. And then, we'll be working to come up with our own resolution for the Board of
Okay.
Commissioners.
And a question on the makeup of the MMPC. I see the list of requirements on page 260, I believe, or 261. I see that, I recall you saying up to a 13-member?
Yep.
So are there any room are they all defined? I didn't count these to see, but are they all defined as to what they need to be, or is there room for just a miscellaneous, I guess?
They are all defined. The optional, at the bottom there is, regional groups, so.
Okay.
That would probably be something like a landfill operator, since Eaton County doesn't have any, landfills in operation, or something like Mterra, which manages materials, and which likely a lot of our materials would be heading to, too.
Potentially going to, okay.
Yep.
Now, do you anticipate that the Resource Recovery Department will be bringing, because this body has to appoint that committee, do you anticipate that your department will be bringing recommendations for who to appoint to that committee, based on conversations? I mean, some of these obviously have to come from certain agencies where you'll have to have conversations with them, and they'll probably give you a recommended person to put on that, but is that how you see it going forward, or do we have to do all the legwork to go find people to sit on this committee?
No, the Resource Recovery will be providing a list. We've already been in talks with Granger, Hammond Landscaping. We would be in talks with the Conservation District here, and we would be coming up with a list of potential committee members and sending out information or solicitations for them to be on the committee. And essentially, we would be holding interviews and seeing if they, once they're briefed about what the committee entails, that they would be able to accept. And the committee appointments are 5-year appointments. And so it is a large commitment for these organizations.
Sure. And do you see this committee, I mean, does the statute, or just in your opinion of what this committee is, do you think that it will continue? This is not just for doing the plan initially, this is for ongoing continuation of monitoring the plan, or what is the purpose of the committee to continue, I guess, would be my question.
Yes, to continue to update the plan, and as.
Similar to our zoning ordinance committee or our zoning, planning and zoning committee, then they would continue to monitor and update as needed then going forward?
Correct.
Okay, all right, very good, thank you.
You had a question?
Nice to meet you, Jared. Do you know, and it sounds like you're still going to inquire with other counties, but have you heard what Clinton and Ingham are going to do?
Clinton, I believe Clinton has already submitted or appointed their county approval agency.
Oh.
And they've appointed their designated planning agency. And so they are currently working on their own timeline. In our talks with Ingham County is looking to get their ducks in a row, so to speak, before they trigger any additional timelines or deadlines with their approval process.
Yeah, and that's unfortunate. I'm going to be the odd duck out. I mean, Eaton County doesn't operate in a vacuum. We operate as a tri-county region, so I mean, I would see a lot of value in having this go to tri-county. But it sounds like if Clinton's already kind of rolled their own ball and they're not going to operate as a tri-county, then kind of closes the door on that.
Yes, so it looks like the tri-county area is looking at doing internal plans for each county.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Yes.
Just to follow up on that, Trevor, we have talked a lot about the idea of even if we don't have the same work as a regional approval authority, that we still work together on regional projects and try to figure out how to deal with the situation, because you're right, it's not just an Eaton County problem, so it needs to be dealt with regionally. So the Resource Recovery Department has assured us that they will continue to collaborate with the neighboring counties to continue to, make good decisions from a regional perspective too.
Right, and I hear you on that. It's just if, and it sounds like this is almost like a per person, I forgot the funding model, but it sounds like it's generated by population. So, I mean, if you're leveraging these funds at a tri-county level, you're gonna have one entity that leverages money across one entity. So, I mean, the point's already defeated if Clinton County's gonna do its own thing, but yeah, it just seems like it would have been advantageous to go that route, my own opinion.
Joe, wait a minute, Joe, Brian, you're after Joe.
They're always after me.
He's senior.
That 110, 120,000 that you referenced, is that just a 1 year, a one-off? Or is that money that will be coming in, or at least some of it be coming in on a regular basis?
The MMP process, the state of Michigan is giving us 3 years to complete it from our submission of the notice of intent, and those funds would be available for 3 years. And the intention would be to build out infrastructure. We may need to hire staff, or a direction other counties are going in. They're outsourcing the entire process to environmental engineering firms, and so their contracts are going to be paid out of those funds.
So, well, excuse me, I anticipated that we're talking about some expenses that are going to continue onward. So the money is the 110 to 120,000 that you anticipate we would see the first year. We're assured of receiving that for the next 3 years, and then is there no, at this point, do we not know what happens after that? Because at that point, the county going to be on the hook for whatever costs it's incurred in expanding this?
So far, I do not have enough information to answer that, but for 3 years, there is a mandate from Eagle, and discussions with other counties and other groups involved with the MMP process. There is discussions about whether or not this is an unfunded mandate due to the low amount of funds and the expenses that are going to be incurred by developing this plan and implementing the plan.
Well, I can see a lot of potential opposition from local governments in regards to this, because to do this right, I think, is going to cost some money. This is almost, and including your justifications for it, this is exactly the same conversation we had 30 years ago. That's why your department exists. So Eaton County at least is probably a leg up on a lot of counties, because we established the Resource Recovery Department precisely for these reasons. And we found a way for it to fund itself. So at least I guess the county would have to look at an increase in the fee for the resource recovery would be the way that we would go, but, yeah, all right, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, you've given us the option to accept or decline. Can you briefly summarize the advantage to accepting and the disadvantage to accepting?
By accepting the county approval agency, it would give the Eaton County Board of Commissioners jurisdiction over over the approval process for how the materials management plan develops. And with the process, by the county accepting, Resource Recovery would be working with the Materials Management Planning Committee, and the Planning Committee would make recommendations to Resource Recovery. We would write it into our work plan, and all approvals would go through the Eaton County Board of Commissioners, I'm sorry. And so the primary difference would be by declining and we went to a regional, so let's say Tri-County or some other combination, it would greatly reduce the power of the Eaton County Board of Commissioners, and we would have to change the makeup of the county approval agency, and it would look like it would be a board more or less reflecting who our collaborators or our partners are within the planning area. And so effectively by declining, Eaton County would lose a lot of oversight over the process, and there may be decisions that are not necessarily as favorable to Eaton County or the citizens for the planning process and an approval process.
All right, to follow up on that, this is all under the guidelines and purview of the Eagle, I'm assuming. So how much freedom do we have in making policy for Eaton County?
We will, the Eagle is essentially making the counties responsible for their own planning, and the advantages that has for us is that we know our waste streams, we know our communities, we know our haulers, we know our stakeholders within the county. And by developing the plan within Eaton County, we'll be able to work with our stakeholders and our community members much more closely. And Eagle is just the final approval body. So what Eagle is really looking for is that we have data tracking and monitoring systems set up for our waste streams. And what we're going to be reporting to Eagle is what percentages of our waste are diverted from landfills and where it's going. Is it going to recycling centers? Is it going to composting facilities, hazardous waste disposal facilities? And so Eagle is just going to be looking at numbers, basically. And so as far as the locations of our transfer sites, of our resource recovery facilities, and our recycling centers, that would be, Eagle doesn't have jurisdiction over that. So we would maintain control over where these sites are, what gets picked up and dropped off there, and where it goes.
So then if we are directed by Eagle, for instance, to accept trash from outside our county or outside our state or even outside our nation, what kind of power would we have to say, no, we're not going to take that into our landfill?
I believe that we would have power, and it's up to us, since we're going to be declining the multi-county agreement, working with adjacent counties. That doesn't mean, as stated before, that we cannot work with other counties. For example, Berry and Ionia County have been in talks with us over the years with using Sunfield and some other centers. And it will be up to the Board of Commissioners and Resource Recovery how to integrate these communities or these different counties. And Eagle really wouldn't have any jurisdiction over that from what I understand, unless we accept the multi-county agreement as the county approval agency.
Well, you told us that we were receiving refuse from Indiana and Ohio because we are cheaper.
Yeah.
So we would be able to say to them, no, sorry, we're not going to accept that any longer.
We do not have an operating landfill. If we did,
In the future, because it's
Yeah.
going to cover a time period way
Yep.
beyond Joe.
That's not long. That's a low bar.
that, I believe that's up to the landfill operators themselves. And so,
Not sure where you're going. I mean, the problem is that we're taking trash from everywhere. And we want to stop that, so they're going to talk about raising the tipping fees. So I don't think at this point it's realistic for us to be concerned about Eagles saying you're going to start accepting waste from Karachi, Pakistan, or
Our non-existent landfill.
in a non-existent, well, at this point, I guess we could open up the old landfill and try again.
I don't think we can.
So I think the intent, from what I understand, is just the opposite of what your concerns are. The state is looking for ways to stop the other outside communities from using these landfills. As to whether or not we will ever have the authority to tell Granger that they can and cannot accept waste from Ann Arbor, as an example, or Birmingham or Detroit. There are some of us who aren't particularly capitalistic-minded who might not mind that power, but the fact is that they're a private, for-profit company, and I don't know that would be anybody, Eagle or anybody else, is going to be able to tell them they can't take it from Ann Arbor. The only way that the state's going to stop them from taking it from Terre Haute, Indiana, is by making it so expensive that Terre Haute goes someplace else.
My concern with this down the road is we've got a battery plant that's going in our county. They're going to have refuse from that, don't know what it is. It's got to go someplace. Same way with the windmills, the parts that aren't recyclable, they're burying propeller blades out in Nevada, or I don't know where they're buried. I saw a video on it. But that certainly could become an issue in Michigan, central Michigan. We don't have an operating landfill now, but we could in the future. Are we going to allow them to bring that kind of stuff into Eaton County? Maybe we don't even have those things in Eaton County, but we're supposed to dispose of them for them. So I want to know how much power we would have should they approach us and say, you need to accept this. I want to be able to say no. And I don't know if this is built into this, giving us that ability, or they're just giving us a bigger box to operating it in, but we're still underneath the confines of Eagle and the state of Michigan as a whole. That's my concern.
Okay. Terrence?
Thank you, Madam Chair. A couple of things, I guess, to follow up on the first question, which is, what do we gain or lose by accepting the responsibility? I mean, I'll just, with all due respect to Jared's answer, I'll boil it down to this. Local control is what we lose. I mean, if we want to kick this to Tri-County or kick it to the state and give up our rights and responsibilities as a county board to control this, then we can do that. I think that would be silly and doesn't make any sense. And quite frankly, I'm not sure, talking about I understand your concern, Brian, but I don't think that doesn't change one way or another, regardless of who the agency is. We're still under the guise of Eagle when it comes to this type of stuff. So I don't see, I don't think that you're recommending that we decline responsibility and kick the can to somebody else, but if that's where you're headed, I don't think that would make any difference with your concern, I guess is what I'm saying.
No, I'm not in favor of declining it at all, but looking at this collaborative county or commission here with 13 people, we got people from the outside, and I'm just wondering how much, given the expense of this, how much control we're going to be able to have to make those decisions. That's my concern. Is this going to be enough to keep things out of Eaton County if we choose to?
I don't think that's the intent of this plan. The intent of the plan is to try to rethink about how we look at materials management and look more towards, again, completing that circle and doing more recycling, composting, that types of thing, instead of sending it to the landfill. That was the original intent of looking at these material management plans. And so the state, your initial question about how much is the state going to tell us and Eagle going to tell us, how much are we going to be able to decide for ourselves? Like anything passed down from the state, they are doing this because they have floors that they want to hit for certain things, or they have targets. So I'm assuming that in their final approval, they're going to require that our plan hits those targets of what the state's trying to do. That's the whole intent of this process. So there will be some things that we will have to do just by means of the statute and the intent of the statute. But how we get there and how we do it will be what this body will determine, is how I understand it. And so, again, I think it's extremely important that we accept the responsibility. And to Joe's point about the money, unfortunately, you know, the money part, the funding part of this is only meant for the planning phases, right? So that's why it's only 3 years. It's just meant to plan this and get this new plan up and running and into place. And as Jared mentioned, I'm sure a lot, if not most, counties out there will probably contract with somebody, with a third party to do this type of work. But I think that Eaton County, and this is what we've been talking about for years since we knew this was coming, Eaton County, by means of our existing ordinance and where this board and the previous boards have had the foresight to move forward, have put us in a better position than a lot of other counties and jurisdictions out there to be able to do this on our own without having to contract with other agencies that, quite frankly, have let us down in the past. So I won't name any names, but, so again, I think that the approach that we're taking is the right approach, so.
Yes. Yeah, you, Joe.
I think we're talking about two different things here at this point, Brian. You know, this, although he talked about, you know, part of the impetus is that the landfills are taking waste from other places. This whole thing is looking at what we're diverting, how we're diverting it, how much we're diverting, where we're diverting it to, is the ultimate process that everybody's supposed to be working on. If, in fact, there came a point where we were going to have a landfill within Eaton County, I think there are other regulations out there in terms of the zoning and various requirements that are probably set as far up as the federal government, I would suspect, that would have to be met before anything could be developed. And at that point, the question would, if the question arose as to what types of materials they were going to take, that would all get hashed out at that point. This particular statute, I don't think, addresses that at all. And frankly, I'll go to the waste that has been created by nuclear energy. They've been fighting at the state, local, and federal level for 40, 50 years where to put that stuff. And they found a number of different places, and the local communities have all risen up in arms and said, not here. So if, in fact, at some point down the road, we were actually going to look at, you know, some developer or someone came in and said, I want to start a landfill in one of our townships, and we were to start that process to develop that, I'm sure that if we were going to start taking nuclear waste as an example, we'd have lots of people that would be interested, and that would probably slow the process down to a halt. So I think we're talking about two different things. The ultimate, as I understand it, the ultimate reason for this particular process is for the counties to develop plans, or if not the counties, ultimately the state, to develop a plan for each county as to what their waste is, what they're diverting of that waste, where that those diversions are going, and the amounts that they're doing. And the other stuff you're talking about, I think, is probably covered by entirely different statutes and entirely different processes.
Yes, Blake.
Weigh in a little bit, but I do agree that this is about local control, and that's the good side of it. The bad side is the unfunded mandates. This is not gonna be free. We're gonna pay for this. We're gonna pay, tipping fees are gonna go higher. Frankly, we're gonna have a department that currently has 3 people in it, which could end up being a department that has, who knows, 6 people. I'm just throwing out a number, but we're expanding, all right? We at the county level are taking on responsibilities. We're gonna pay for it. Tipping fees will go up, and that means your trash hauling expenses are gonna go up. I mean, this is a choice that we're making. Now, whether we want to, if we want to kick it all down to the state and let them charge us in another way, that's another option. Whether you want to control how it works, that's the choice we're making here with this process. Be aware, what Joe started talking about is the financial part of it. They're going to give us $100 and some thousand to plan. But what we're planning is what we're going to be doing long-term after this, and there are financial consequences, and I just want us to acknowledge that. And I don't know what they're going to be at this point. I mean, no one does, because we don't know what the plan is yet. We're taking the initial steps. And I'm not opposed to this. I just want us to go in with eyes wide open.
Well, the costs are gonna go up regardless, Blake. I mean, the tipping fees are gonna go up regardless of what we do. I mean, the expenses are gonna go up regardless of what we do. I mean, so in terms of the cost to our constituents, that's probably a reality at this point.
Jim?
Thanks, Madam Chair. So if we don't use all the 110,000, do we get to keep it? We don't have to give it back, do we?
I'm unsure.
Okay. Well, the question I have, you mentioned that the state wants a number of how much we're saving and not putting in the landfills. Are we already doing that, or do you have to come up from a system that is acceptable to the state, that they want?
We're going to have our own center.
To a degree, we are doing it with our current swag and swole program. So our haulers are required to report the tonnage that they are bringing to the landfill through the trash and through the recycling. And what we're going to have to be doing is maybe tightening up that data and information, because we're going to have to use it to make decisions, capital-based decisions. So building out facilities, and if we don't have the right numbers, if we want to build out a couple facilities, we need to have accurate data on that. And so what we're going to be doing is working with our townships and municipalities and their recycling centers, and be looking at standardizing the data that we're going to be using. And by standardizing the data, and formalizing it, we'll be able to make the best decisions for the county.
Okay, yeah, because I was just picturing, not that we would, because we're honest, but, what would prevent some county just for fudging numbers, saying, look, this is what we've done, so I would assume there'd be some kind of accountability and standard and, checks.
I would hope so, too. Yeah.
All right, thanks, Jared.
Yep.
Any other questions?
I'll just make one note to Commissioner Augustine's question about that letter of intent. So we did receive the notice from the state, which is what you're referring to, that was in January, which started our 180 days. So that's all that we had received. We didn't take action.
Thank you, appreciate that.
Any other questions? Yes, Terrence?
I have a question that has nothing to do with materials management, if we're done with this topic.
You did a great job, Jared.
Yeah, thank you.
you.
Appreciate it.
Just to summarize, so Jared is asking us to consider this and talk about it at our next, make some sort of a decision next month.
Correct.
Okay.
My question is on the trailer. How are we coming with the mobile trailer?
It's coming along. We're deciding on color. And then,
Green, of course.
well, we want to stand out from other haulers too.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Dark green and yellow.
Light green, dark green, middle green, what kind of green are you talking about?
Just make sure it's got our new logo on it.
Yeah, and we wanna look at Logan's doing a great job with branding for the county.
Oh, you got Logan involved in this?
And
Oh,
we, yeah, and we want, as Resource Recovery and Eaton County builds out their recycling and waste programs, we want to have that brand recognition. So when people see our trailers, when people see our logo, they know it's quality, they know it's good programs, and they know what they're doing is being effective.
Well, and that will help with our consistency of promoting and things in the future that we've been talking about for years. So that's great. But do do we have a timeline of when we think we're going to get it? I know last time we talked, we were looking at maybe a month or two out, I thought.
Debbie?
They're requesting the color, and they had originally said that,
Debbie, you want to come up? Sorry.
It's a
originally they requested the color in the last month of production. They've requested the color. So we're having a meeting today to try to finalize that. So I would estimate a month
Okay.
after that by their timeline.
Okay, okay, good.
Thank you.
Yes, Blake.
Along those lines, kind of. what-
Blake, leave your phone, mic, please.
Along those lines, one of our larger partners is, over in Delta. Are we engaged with them, making some of the decisions? Are we talking with them about, and I don't mean it, being involved in our partners is important, and they have they have a lot of volunteers, and they've got a center up and running that we're involved in. And how's our interaction
Involved in picking
with
the
Delta
color?
Recycling?
I think our interaction with Delta is good. We do not, we have a couple of programs there. We have the battery recycling program. We have the printer cartridge program. They participate in our string light program. We do have a rural electronics grant program with them that's had some challenges that we may end up having to bring forward soon. But otherwise, I think our working relationship with them is good. Granger handles their materials. So as far as material management planning, we really just get numbers from Granger for
Okay.
them. We don't have to get anything directly from.
Well, I'm kind of looking at, I'm getting ahead of it here, but looking at the plan, and that, a third of our recycling or more is that direction, and we're looking at doing studies and doing measurements and getting some stats. I want to make sure that we have a good interaction, and that we're getting good feedback, and we're getting good back and forth with one of the larger recycling areas in the county. So,
We have
I don't want to be separate, that's
We have
my
a real
problem.
good relationship with all of our recycling centers. The question, I think, is sometimes the reporting that we get from those that are handled by haulers. One center, their hauler gives them the same report every quarter. So for 3-4 years, down to a tenth, they take in the same materials every quarter.
Weird.
Yes, it is a strange phenomenon. And there's a typo in it, that we get the same typo every quarter. In the past, and I have been discussing these things with Jared, in the past, it was always said to us, don't rock the boat. We're going to have to rock that boat if we're going to get adequate numbers.
Well, and this is part of the reason why the recycling work group has moved forward with the idea, again, of consolidating these services, because we don't get good information, regardless of whether it's the haulers or the local municipalities themselves. Part of our problem is it's hard to gauge how well you're doing at solving the problem if you don't get good information. So that's, again, part of the reason why we've looked at what we're looking at doing for recycling countywide. So it's not necessarily Delta's fault. It's part of our issue right now is we don't get good data. So another reason why it'd be nice to be able to get that all into one area, so.
We're definitely working with our partners. Jared and I went out and viewed the new Hamlin Township Center, because since they're not receiving any county funds, any solid waste ordinance funds, at this point, they really don't have to report to us. They technically would have to report to Eagle. We have the yearly material management that we have to report to Eagle. And I report on behalf of some of our centers, and some of the centers report their own.
Well, we're just looking at a policy that really all it is planning, and it's figuring out where the streams are and how much is in each stream. And honestly, I don't, obviously we need to get our data refined, where we're getting it from and who's giving it to us, and if we're getting it all. That's I got it. That's what we're doing right. That's what this whole materials plan is. That's one of the initial most important things. And frankly, I'm not sure that we've got all of the pieces together yet, and I'm hoping that we can get that, because to make the right decision, we have to have the right input, so.
Well, unless, I mean, I have to think that this whole process that the state passed is going to give the local communities, the counties, if we accept the designation, some teeth in forcing these companies to give us the material, the information that we want. Otherwise, this whole thing is a waste of time. They control it. They know what they're taking to the landfill. They know what they're getting. And so for us to sit there and put together reports about the type of waste we're generating, and where that waste is going and how much we're diverting, it's all got to come from them. So if the state doesn't give us the teeth to go to some of these people and say, you know what, this form you've been copying for the last 5 years, that stops today, then we're all wasting our time, and we've wasted 45 minutes talking about something that's not going to do a damn thing.
Any other questions? Thank you. Thank you for the very informative report.
Thank you.
Next, Parks.
Hello, everyone.
Oh, April.
I want to highlight a couple things on my report. Working with John Merrick on updating our park maps. I want to get these up to current facilities, amenities, and all that. And then once the strategic plan starts being implemented, it'd be a lot faster, a lot easier to add these to the map that's currently existing. I've also spoken with John about doing some drone footage. So once the foliage starts popping out and everything looks nice and green out, John's going to use his drone, and we'd like to highlight certain parts of some of our popular parks. So for instance, at Fitzgerald Park, we want to get drone footage of the Ledges Trail. Eventually, once we get the restoration completed this summer on the kiln, a nice aerial view of that. Lincoln Brick, we could potentially get like a nice aerial view of the quarry with the river and everything, and some of the sandstone ledges there. So it just kind of get people's attention and spark their interest and get a lot more people coming out to the parks, because I really don't think a lot of people are aware of what we really have in this area if you're not from this area. And it's kind of funny, often, I'd say maybe once a month, I speak with somebody who lives as close as Lansing, Michigan, and they'll be asking about Fitzgerald Park, and they've never been there. And they just happen to come across a picture, it sparked their interest, and then from there, the communication starts, and eventually they come over and visit us. So that's very interesting to me, because Grand Ledge obviously is not very far from Lansing, Michigan. So conducted interviews yesterday for the naturalist position. We had a really good turnout as far as applicants. I want to say it was right around 30 applicants total. Some really great qualified people. Interviews went very well yesterday. I'm going to check on some references today and see how that goes, but was very impressed. I'm very pleased about that. And I'm actually very excited, because I really think we have the opportunity here to expand on the naturalist programs and offer a lot of things that other parks might not offer consistently or at all. So really looking to revamp this up and have some great programs for everybody throughout the year consistently. I think that's really important, is that when we are doing these programs, that we're consistent with it. We're getting ahead of it, we're promoting it, ample time and everything. So really excited about that. Been speaking with the Friends of Eaton County, and they have agreed to purchase and install lights at the Lincoln Brick Interpretive Center. I don't know if you guys are familiar with this area at all, but it can get very dark out there at night. And we do have like local groups like the Lions Clubs. They rent the Lions Den there from us. And then obviously we have other users that rent that. So this will be a great addition for the parking lot. It'll light it up for people. And on top of that, it'll add a little bit of security. Not that we have any issues out there, but it'll light up the area and a nice addition. And we're also in discussions with them about possibly purchasing a playground and adding one out at Lincoln Brick as well. But that's just discussion right now. But the lights are a go, so I'd like to say thank you to the Friends Group for that. Still continuing on the budget process, getting quotes. Oh, and I also attended the M-Parks Conference the last week of February. That's always a great event. You know, you get something out of it, whether it's networking or being able to see the new products, parks, practices, workshops. You always get something out of it. The worst one I've ever been to, I've always gotten something out of it, so that was exciting. I don't know if anybody has any questions on my report itself?
Blake?
Dealing with the naturalist, are we still on, even though we don't have one yet, are we still a plan on going ahead with Annie's Big Nature Lesson and with our summer programs, or we've got those on hold? What's the status?
No, so the summer camp programs, that's actually operated by the part-time rec coordinator. So those are all set, they're ready to go. Annie's Big Nature Lesson, I've been in contact with Margaret, who is the director of that organization. And yes, we are going through with that. I've been very honest with Margaret and said, you know, if we do have naturalists in this position, which we may not, they're going to be really green. So she's got a bunch of volunteers. They're actually, a lot of them are retired school teachers. So we've got a really good support group there. And yes, we absolutely want to continue with this program. It's a wonderful program. It's more than just kids getting out on like a field trip and getting exposed to nature. It's a very important program for some children because they don't know how to express themselves maybe in a traditional classroom setting, but when they get out into the parks, they're able to do the journaling and really do some abstract thinking. So it's a great program.
Well, and it's also a good advertisement for our parks.
Yes.
Young people get in, their parents, you know, you talk about whether anyone's been to Fitzgerald Park before. Well, this is the way they get into it. They go there, they see what it is, or over at Lincoln. You know, no one would ever go to Lincoln, they wouldn't stumble on it unless they were involved in some sort of an outreach program like we're talking about here.
Yeah, and it's interesting you say that. So as I've been sitting in on these meetings with the ABNL, it's been brought to my attention that a lot of the teachers and students actually prefer Lincoln Brick over some of these other nature centers. And not because they're not great, we just have such a variety of things out at Lincoln Brick, you know, like the sandstone ledges, the elevation changes. I don't think, if you've never been there, I don't think people realize how high up you are above that river. So yeah, just beautiful views. We have an amazing prairie out there. So yeah, we've got a lot of good things going on at Lincoln Brick. Yeah.
Yes, Terrence.
Thank you. I'll add, nobody knows the elevation changes as well as my son does, so. Inside joke, sorry. Travis, the discussion about the naturalist and the programming, and we've talked for quite a while about the idea of doing more with programming. Is it your anticipation that that moving forward, when we hire the naturalists, that they'll be a key part of that? Or do you think that a lot of the programming will fall to our current programmer who's handling the summer rec program? And then to follow up on that question, I guess I would ask, you know, are we looking to expand that summer program? Because my understanding of the last couple of years has been very, very popular, and we've had to cut registration off because we haven't been able to take more kids. So are we looking to either move that person to a more full-time role or add support so that we can expand that? Because that program seems to be working, so let's expand it.
Right, so I'll address the expansion first. So we're at our cap as far as with the state of Michigan for the size of our building. We can't add any more people, and I believe that cap is 24 people, and that's going off of the LoRa licensing and all that with the state of Michigan. So if we had another facility, we could absolutely open that up for more registration.
Are you talking the summer camp?
Yep, the summer camp.
Okay.
Yep. So as far as attendance on that, we're maxed out. And the only way we can add more students to that is expanding the building or using another building to operate the summer camps out of. Yep.
Because I was thinking, for some reason, I was thinking that we did it at multiple locations.
No, so we do it at Lincoln Brick.
Okay.
Yep. And the reason for that is that's really our only facility that we have, obviously, like bathrooms, classroom setting, and then, the location of the park itself, so.
Right, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so more reason to develop something at, say, Crandall, to put it over in the central part of the county, to open
Yeah.
it up hopefully to more people.
Yeah, absolutely. You could run another camp at.
Okay, so it's not necessarily just staffing, it's infrastructure. That's really what's holding us up then at this point then?
Yes.
As far as expanding that program?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, and as far as the programming, no, so the naturalists will be heavily involved in that programming, but their programming will be, your naturalist programming, conservation-based, stewardship, invasive species.
Right, not like archery or like camps
Yeah.
and things like that. It'd be more, okay, right,
Yes,
okay.
Yes, yep.
So that description, that job description would stay the same. It wouldn't be changing. We're just,
Yes, I did add a few things, and one of them was managing and addressing the invasive species in our properties.
okay.
In a situation like we had last August, emergency storm cleanup or whatever, they might assist on that, but that's a rarity. I mean, and that's only if, we have something massive that just, comes along, so.
And then my last question is in regards to the Friends of the Parks. Just curious, I know they've been through different, I think maybe some leadership changes there. Are they building a little bit better now of an organization? or-
Yeah, they're trying to recruit new members. So if you guys actually know anybody who you think might be a good fit for that, have them reach out to me or Riley Spade or, Sarah Ferguson, anybody like that. But they would love to get new members on board. But yes, they are actively trying to recruit people. They're still very interested in participating in the parks.
And how do we decide going forward? You mentioned that they're funding the installation of the lights at Lincoln Brick, which we're grateful for, and I'm sure Riley had a lot to do with that. But how do we determine, what projects we ask them for funding? Or did they come to us and say, we'd like to do this, if we pay for it, can we do it? How do we, because now that we have our own monies to invest, before it was whatever we had was whatever they gave us, essentially.
Right.
It's a little different story now, and we want to continue to partner with them, but.
Right, yeah, so it's both. Sometimes we'll be doing, we'll be looking at a project and we'll ask them if they'd be interested in participating in that project. And that might be something as, buying a picnic table for that area or something like that. But often they will come to us and they'll say, hey, we've got this dollar amount. Are there any projects that you guys would like us to fund? And I would say that that's probably the more common occurrence between the two groups.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, good. So you feel like there's still strong collaboration there
Yes,
with the
yeah.
Friends group?
Yeah, I do. And again, once we start getting some programs going, a lot more volunteer projects, like invasive species, volunteer days on something like that, I expect them to be a lot more involved in the parks and having a lot more fun,
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay, great, thank you.
Any other questions or concerns? Do you have anything else for us?
No, that's it.
Okay, well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
That Pace. Pace is up next. Oh, that's our treasurer.
Morning, Madam Chair, Commissioners. It's been a great informative meeting this morning. As an old-timer PR communications guy, I love hearing about all the communication stuff. That's the stuff that makes the difference. And love the new logo. This morning, I'm bringing some updates to you on the PACE program or the PACE district that you've established for Eaton County. This is a program that I brought to you back in 2014. And a quick refresher, the PACE program is a district that you established that allows businesses to make energy-efficient upgrades to their facilities and to use the tool of a 20-year special assessment on the property as a way to pay for those upgrades rather than having to go out and get a commercial loan. It just makes upgrades to their facilities a lot more affordable. This has been a very successful program for us here in Eaton County. To date, we have, I think, 5 PACE projects in the county, which include auto owners with the new training facility just off the expressway north of here. It includes the Public Service Commission facility that's out on West Saginaw. So we, in Eaton County, were the first county to actually employ a PACE program project for the state of Michigan. We also have a PACE project here in the county for Liquid Web. So again, it's been a very successful program that's helped us provide some good economic development tools to some, what I would consider, some anchor businesses here in Eaton County. The upgrades to the program, and you all have a document, the basic program document in your packet this morning. The upgrades essentially are to the requirement of energy efficient savings that were in the program. In order to take on a PACE project for your business, the original program required that the energy efficient upgrades provide enough savings in the project over a specific period of time that would essentially pay for the project or for the upgrades. Well, that has been eliminated under the program. This was statutory coming from our legislature in Lansing, so that that's no longer required. So the energy efficient upgrades in and of themselves do not have to pay for the costs of the project. It basically expands the program and opens up some of the more tightened restrictions. I think it's a good addition to the program. I think it's going to enable us to make it available to a wider number of businesses here in Eaton County. As I've mentioned, I think it is a terrific economic development tool, and I'm proud to say we lead the state in number of PACE projects, although Oakland County is on our tail, so I guess I'm going to have to get moving. But it's been a good program, and I would highly recommend that you approve this update to our document and our program district in Eaton County. But I'm here to answer any further questions.
Support.
Jill moved into.
Yes.
No, it was moved.
I was.
Oh, it's,
Supported.
is there any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carries.
I think the 2 Democrats voted for it, Bob, so congratulations.
Okay, next on the agenda is we're down to miscellaneous?
No miscellaneous.
No miscellaneous. Any public comments?
Hi, friends. How's it going? I won't keep you. I just wanted to give you some updates from the district, the Conservation District. First and foremost, I don't know if you've heard, but the new budget recommendation from the governor took some recommendations from MDARD, which would move the MEAP program, the Michigan Agricultural Environmental Assurance Program, is currently conducted by our office and has been for probably about 15 years. And MDARD is suggesting that that actually be conducted by MDARD. And so that position would be eliminated from the district, and those technicians would be hired by the state, and they would be working from home, and they would be reducing the number of positions from 42 to 20. And they would be concentrated on the eastern side of the state in the western Lake Erie Basin and Saginaw watersheds. So obviously, this would, I have to be careful what I say because I don't think I'm supposed to politically sway anybody in any way, but It would remove a full-time position from our district, and as you know, we are 2.5 employees right now, so we would be 1.5 employees if this happens. And it would also mean that whatever MEP technician takes over this area, our county, would probably also have several other counties. I don't know how many at this point, but it would probably be a large region. So obviously, that would be a large reduction for our local agricultural community in the support that they're getting. And so we're collecting information from the public right now, specifically from producers, to ask them how they feel about this sort of proposal, how they think it would impact their ability to contribute and their desire to contribute since, or to cooperate with the program, since these would now be state employees coming onto private property as opposed to, we're non-regulatory, everything we do is voluntary, confidential, we're just here to help. Whereas if MDARD is coming onto your property, there's questions about whether or not, MDARD would be required to report things that they find there if they're in violation with EGLE regulations. So there's some concern over what that would mean for property owners. So that's currently in the budget. The budget also includes a $1 million reduction to conservation operations, conservation district operations. That amounts to about $13,000 for our district, so it would reduce us from $40,000 to $26,600 that we'd be getting. So in all, if both of these things go through, that would be a 40% cut to our budget at the district. I will say that once this budgetary proposal came out and it was made public, our MEP technician, who has been with us for 6 months and was amazing, gave her notice within a week. So we now are on the search for a new MEP technician, which is tricky because it's, questionable whether or not we'll have this position for more than 6 months. And it takes about 6 months to really train somebody. So we're doing what we can. I'm looking at additional funding. The last time I was here, I told you that we were looking into grant applications, and we're continuing to do that, filing grant applications wherever possible to find additional funding. But I wanted you to be aware that this is happening, and if you have an opinion about it, I encourage you to reach out to the state level legislators who are going to be ultimately making these decisions through the state budgetary process. So that's one thing I wanted to tell you about. I also wanted to mention some of the events that we have coming up. Very popular this year, our fruit tree pruning workshop. Attendance is doubled. We had to open it up quite a bit. We usually get about 60 people registered for that. We have 110. So obviously very popular workshops this year. Pollinator habitat workshop, doing all the usual things and just trying to knock it out of the park and make it really accessible to people and bring the information that they're looking for. And this year we're adding an Adopt a Stream workshop, and I think I mentioned this to you the last time I was here, that we're hyper-localizing the stream monitoring program so that people can connect specifically with the streams that are running through their neighborhoods and learning how to take care of them and seeing the connection between what they're putting on their lawns or, whatever they're doing and how that's impacting the health of the streams and ultimately our drinking water. So that's happening this month. Tree sales going well. This is going to be, this tree sale is going to be really important because this is our primary source of income that isn't grant related or appropriations related. So we have 2 more weeks to place orders. Please feel free to encourage people to plant more trees. The reforestation is important and it supports the district and the resources that we're able to contribute to the community. And then lastly, I wanted to let you know we're really excited to receive the honor. Lugnut Stadium reached out to us and invited us to be featured on Arbor Day at the baseball game. And so we'll be extending an invitation to all of you. I'll be in touch with you about that, but we're going to have a lot of fun with it. And the whole theme is going to be a conservation takeover and highlighting all of the projects that we've done here in the county to conserve our natural resources. So that'll be really exciting to get, the 5,000 or so attendees at that game to be able to see some of the cool things that we're doing here. Any questions?
If you,
Jim?
go ahead, Jim.
No, I just want to say, I'm sorry to hear that the state's taken over that meat program because you guys have done a terrific job. There's farms here that are verified because of the work that you guys have done. And they trust you and they know that you're here to help them and not penalize them, which they're going to view the state that way. And they're not likely to sign up for the ones that have not been verified. And it's a good program. So I'm really disheartened to hear that, because I think when you're taking it away, the local interaction that we have, and you guys are at just about every ag function that I go to, and you're informing the farmers and people that could benefit from this program. I just disheartened to hear that. So.
Appreciate that. It's not final yet, so please feel free to, express your opinions to those who are making the decision.
Do you know if Michigan Farm Bureau is
They're solidly
involved?
on our side.
Okay.
Yeah.
Anybody? Yes.
If you haven't shared with us already the tree sales via email or send it to our controller, Claudine, or something, please do so we can get that information out to try to help boost sales, so,
Sure. Thank you.
yeah.
Anybody else?
All right. Thanks, guys.
Thank you. Any other limited comments? Do we have a motion to adjourn? I'm going to adjourn this meeting. Thank you.